You know that feeling, right? That deep gut instinct. When something is just off, even if you can't explain why. That little voice screaming a warning when everything on the surface looks perfectly fine. Well, tonight we've got 5 stories where that feeling wasn't just a hunch. It was a terrifying reality. These aren't made up campfire scares. We're talking about chilling events, some pulled straight from the news, others shared by those who lived through them. So maybe double check those locks. Take a quick peek under the bed, because tonight, real life is about to feel a whole lot scarier than any movie. First up, we head to North London, back in August 2016. This is the tragic story of Kennedy Afe, a 26-year-old guy. It all started when Kennedy began acting really strangely, sometimes even violently, right after he mentioned having a sore throat. His family, who were deeply religious, grew convinced this wasn't a normal illness. They believed he was possessed by a demon. So instead of getting a doctor, they decided to restrain him. Imagine this: Kennedy was tied to his own bed with cable ties and handcuffs. For 3 days, he went through what his family thought was an exorcism, constant prayers, and rituals they hoped would save him. But all this time, he wasn't getting any actual medical help, and he was getting worse. By the time someone finally called emergency services, it was just too late. Kennedy was found dead. The cause? Dehydration and severe breathing problems. His family was later cleared of manslaughter and other charges because the court believed they genuinely, though mistakenly, thought he was possessed. It's a heartbreaking story that just shows you the terrifying power of belief and how terribly wrong things can go when fear takes over. That first story is a tough one, a real tragedy rooted in belief gone wrong. Now let's shift gears and head over to America, to a house where belief, or faith, was pretty much the only thing a family had to protect themselves from something truly terrifying and unexplainable. Notre Mac in 2014, a story hit the news that sounded like it was ripped straight from a horror movie. But for Latoya Ammons and her family in Indianapolis, it was terrifyingly real. They claimed their house was swarming with demonic activity. And we're not talking about a few spooky noises. Her 3 kids were reportedly levitating, being violently thrown across rooms, and even speaking in voices that definitely weren't their own. Can you even imagine the terror of seeing that happen to your children? One of the most chilling incidents, something a nurse and a social worker actually witnessed, involved her 9-year-old son walking backward, up a wall, and then onto the ceiling. This wasn't just the family saying this happened. The official case file ballooned to almost 800 pages. Police officers, psychologists, even a Catholic priest got involved. Eventually, the house was torn down. Now, there will always be people who don't believe it. But with so much testimony from officials backing it up, this has to be one of the most unsettling and convincing stories of a modern haunting out there. All right, let's take a quick breather here. If these stories are already making your skin crawl, do me a favor and hit that like button. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, now's a great time to do it and ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss out on more creepy stories like these. So far, which one has gotten under your skin the most? Drop a comment below and let me know, okay? We've talked supernatural, but sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts or demons. Sometimes the horror is all too human and terribly tragic. Imagine this. You start noticing a weird, pretty awful smell in your apartment building. Days go by, and it just gets stronger and stronger. This isn't fiction. It's a grim story that someone shared, and honestly, it happens more often than we'd like to admit. In a packed apartment building, you know, the kind many of us live in, that terrible smell eventually led to a horrifying discovery. The authorities were called in, and they found the source, a decomposing body in an apartment nearby. Someone had died, all alone, and nobody knew for days. They were just a few doors down from their neighbors. The shock of it is one thing, but then there's that creeping feeling, knowing death was so close, completely unnoticed. That kind of thing sticks with people. It's a chilling reminder of how isolated people can be, even when surrounded by others, and how easily someone can just vanish from sight. Yeah, that's a really unsettling thought, isn't it? But our next story? It takes a seriously bizarre turn. We're going from a place that should have been about healing to a scene of absolute self-inflicted horror. This next one is pretty disturbing. It comes from a former police officer in Virginia, and it happened in a fancy neighborhood, the kind of place you'd least expect this stuff. Apparently, years ago, a doctor decided he was going to perform surgery on himself in his own house. He numbed his stomach area, made the cut, but he went too deep. He actually disemboweled himself. Can you imagine the paramedics arriving to that scene? The doctor, barely alive, literally, holding his own intestines. He didn't make it. Unsurprisingly, the house got a seriously dark reputation after that. People in the area said you could just feel this heavy dread, this awful energy clinging to the place. And then, years later, another tragedy hit the same house. A young woman was found hanged in the basement, just adding another layer of horror to its story. First responders, even neighbors, said they felt it whenever they had to go near that property, like it was stained by that first desperate fatal act. So we've had a house marked by a horrific DIY surgery. Now let's head out into the woods. You know how an isolated cabin can be the perfect setting for a horror movie? Well, for one person, that isolation turned into a night of sheer terror. And Cabin in the Woods. Yeah, it's a horror classic for a very good reason. This story starts with someone already feeling on edge. They'd had a weird run-in with a neighbor during a thunderstorm, so they made sure everything was locked up super tight for the night. Hours pass. Then, a sound just cracks through the silence. A branch snapping right outside their window. And that's when the real nightmare kicked off. Some big, burly stranger started smashing his way into the cabin. Think about that raw, animal fear. The person inside scrambled to hide in the bathroom, frantically calling the police, while this intruder was just tearing through their home, their safe place. The cops got there fast, thankfully, but the attacker had already disappeared into the dark. He left behind a trashed cabin and someone whose feeling of safety was just gone, completely shattered. It's a scary reminder of how vulnerable we can be, and how fast a peaceful getaway can turn into a terrifying trap. So there you have it. 5 stories, 5 peeks into the kind of darkness that can hide just under the surface of normal, everyday life. From what seems like demonic possession to the terrifying things people do out of desperation, these accounts really show that sometimes the truth is way scarier than anything you could make up. It's a reminder that horror isn't always some monster hiding under your bed. Sometimes it's right next door, or in the choices people make, or maybe even in those unexplainable things that just touch the edge of our world. What do you think? Which of these true stories is going to be replaying in your head tonight? Let me know down in the comments. And hey, if you've got your own chilling true story, I'd genuinely love to hear it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell because there are always more shadows out there for us to explore. Stay safe, everyone, and maybe leave a light on tonight.